I want to welcome all you guys to our seventh happy hour, Team Ordinary happy hour and coaches panel. We have a great guest here today. As we go on through the night, we're probably going to click off some of the mute buttons. Just if you feel like you want to ask a question or you have something, you can unmute yourself. Feel free. We're just doing it for the background noise because we are trying to record it for the YouTube channel as well. If you have a question that you want to ask in the middle, you can feel free to put it in the chat. As I don't know if you guys can see the chat already, but Nick threw one in there. We'll definitely get to that one. I'm probably asking similar questions there myself. But without further ado, let's introduce today's guest. She is an ultra marathoner, ultra running coach also. I believe she coaches someone that's with us today, who is right with us, Jen Bergstrom. But I'm going to let her to kind of take over here and maybe introduce herself for a little bit. Jill Becker. Jill, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Just a kind of a little bit of background about myself. So I do online run coaching. I'm a personal trainer. I started getting into ultras in 2012, and I've raced distances from 5K to 100 miles. I'm an Achilles tendon survivor, so I had a freak accident that cut my Achilles tendon, and I basically had to start from scratch. That was in 2005. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Sports Science and Psychology minor, and also physical therapy assistant degree. I've finished 600-mile races and approximately about 30 ultra distance races. Many marathons. I finished the Boston Marathon in 2011 and many triathlons as well, sprint, Olympic, and half Ironman distance. I just love to run, so it's my passion. I love helping people get into running, pushing their limits, whatever distance it is, and yeah, kind of the basics.
All right. Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's, I'm always astounded by people who can run 100 miles and all. There's a certain level of respect and a certain level of just thinking you guys are nuts, but it's amazing. It's just amazing. But with the topic of the day, I guess, let me lob this one at you. I got a few questions in advance from some people who wanted to ask, so we'll go through some of them to start off. How has COVID affected the sport of ultra running? Has it been as affected as, as pretty much all the marathons have been canceled? I don't even know any one of them that have actually gone underway. Are there still ultra races, ultra marathons going on?
Not really. A lot of stuff is turned virtual right now. So it's kind of.
No, nothing.
Yep.
Sorry, Jill.
I know we had to start laughing because
Nick's question there.
I'm sorry.
We were laughing at you.
Is it true that all ultra runners are constantly eating like Jen?
That or drinking whiskey.
That's great. It's happy hour. That's what we do. So, with that, I will defer to Nick's other question, which I think is a great question. What is a gateway entry level type of ultra? Like if you're going for your first ultra,
right?
What's the distance? Is there any specific race? I know Nick actually mentioned one, but what typically is someone's first ultra?
Personally, I started with a 50K. And so anything over 26.2 miles is considered an ultra. So 50K is 31 miles. I'm a very progressive runner, and I feel like that's kept me on longevity since I've been doing ultra since 2012. My body's feeling pretty good still. That 50K would be, if you have done a lot of marathons, then maybe going with a timed ultra. So I've done 8-hour timed ultras, 12-hour race, just because then you don't have that mileage goal that you have to hit. You're just running for that amount of time to kind of get.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out on us just a little bit, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying there, 50K. That being said, I know a lot of the audiences, probably most of us have either finished a marathon or are training to do a marathon. eventually do a marathon. What is the main difference though in training between marathon training and ultra training? What are the main differences between the two?
Getting used to consistently eating and testing out your nutrition. I mean, you do that in a marathon as well, but it's just a longer amount of time that your body just has to get used to eating real food, not just gels and electrolytes as much. Also, back-to-back runs, getting the longer distance in, getting used to hiking and that early morning and night running.
Yeah, that's actually a lot. That's a big difference. There's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the back-to-back, and I think that's kind of like one thing that I was thinking of as a coach myself. It's like when I think of training someone or coaching someone for an ultra, you know, when I think of a marathon, it's like, all right, you got to get up to maybe that 20, 22 mile distance and feel comfortable with the distance. But it's not like if you're running 100 miles, like you're not going to go out and practice by running 90 miles. Like that sounds insane. So how do the back-to-back runs, is it just like you run 20, is it like 20 and 20? How, like what kind of distances do you run back to back?
Personally, every athlete's different that I coach. So I can take people up to 50 miles as their longest run. Some people they're doing 80 miles. It just kind of depends on the person. I'm not one as a coach personally to overtrain someone. I want them to be feeling strong, healthy going into an ultra, because if you're not healthy and have that mental training down before you enter the start line, it's going to be hard to finish just because the ultra wears you down, your body in general anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good lead into the next question, which was how for you personally, how has ultra running affected your overall health, your overall well-being?
Kept me crazy, no. No, I mean, it's helped with my mindset as well. It's kept me overall just physically fit. I'm consistent. Like my mantra is consistent, persistent, never give up. So it's just overall, like I feel like I haven't had a lot of issues in general. I feel like strength training, keeping all the muscles and bones and everything up to date. I take multivitamins, I do protein, that kind of stuff. Fish oil to help with inflammation.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, it's a lot of stuff that goes into that. I had a question on the tip of my mind and I lost it. So I'll just go to the next one on the list. But this is kind of a funny question. But how much Body Glide do you have to use?
Oh my God.
And what brand?
Oh man.
I think that's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I've tried different Body Glides out, but personally what's been working for me the best is called Aquaphor. So it's kind of like an ointment, and I lube up my feet the morning of all with Aquaphor, and that's helped with like a lot of my races go through water. So you're going through water for a couple miles, or I did a 100K that was a looped course, and every loop was about a mile of water. So I just put that Aquaphor on in the morning and I was good to go. But it kind of depends on your socks help as well with the water, because I mean, you're just constantly sweating. I mean, the hot spots, like typically like under the arms, sports bra line, stuff like that. But I typically reapply about mile 50 unless I'm feeling a hot spot. I always carry Aquaphor or some form of Body Glide in my pack at all times. Because you always want to get ahead of everything. Same thing with like nutrition. You never want to get behind in nutrition. You never want to get behind and start feeling hot spots on your body. Yeah,
that's a good point. And you know, it's funny. I actually use the Aquaphor too in triathlons. A friend told me about it and I started using it, and we have a 1-year-old, so we have Aquaphor, you know, all over.
Yeah, he steals it sometimes.
I do. I use it all the time.
I have to buy a new one for her.
But it works really well. And the one thing that you mentioned like staying ahead of it. And I had a problem once where I got like all torn up from the swim on the shoulder, and I decided that it would be a good idea to try to put the ointment on after I already got burned, and you don't want to do that. That makes it way worse. Way worse. But I remembered my question from before. You were talking about sort of your mantra, the persistence and never give up. Now, how much of that mantra do you use in training versus race day? Do you train with that same mantra when you attack a training run, and do you go out with a certain mileage in your head and say, all right, I'm going to try to approach this and practice the mental aspect of the race as well as the physical?
Yeah, I mean, every training run, you're getting one more pebble in that bucket for race day to help with your mindset, because ultras, it's all about mindset. If you have your mind strong, you remember your why, you'll be able to finish, given you're not going to, something physically goes wrong, but overall, mind over miles, always.
Yeah. I agree. I think for me personally, I have to work a little harder on that. Back to the fish oil. Fish oil is good for inflammation. Is there any, do you have any prep for food suggestions? I guess those are two separate questions, or is the fish oil involved in food prep? I don't know.
So fish oil does help with inflammation. I like to use that better than doing like ibuprofen or Tylenol. Just consistently keeping my inflammation down. With all the training, your body is going to be inflamed. So making sure you're staying hydrated with water and electrolytes, and then also just doing the fish oil has worked really well for me. Food prep, having a plan. So making sure you're getting a well-balanced meal. I mean, everyone's different for their different food styles that they enjoy and what works for them, but keeping like a well-balanced protein, carbs, vegetables, and fruit.
That's kind of leads to the next question then, is how much do you eat and drink during a race? You talked about staying ahead of that and nutrition and being ahead of the game. And just in general, what do other people sort of use for fuel, and how often do they eat in an ultra race? It sounds, like obviously you got to do it often. Go ahead.
Yep, consistency. Typically, I mean, everyone's different. So, and I'm not a dietitian by any means, but typically about 200 calories, roughly an hour, is what people really want to be taking in. And with ultras, there's a buffet. So you're going to be overwhelmed with all the food, but it's dialing it in, having a plan going into it. You really, like I always tell all my athletes, try not to try anything new on race day, no matter if you're running a 5K or you're doing an ultra marathon. So it's kind of sticking with your plan. So having a plan of attack and just implementing that is the key. There's a lot of different nutrition things out there. I'm a huge fan of Tailwind Nutrition. That's my electrolyte source that I use currently. I mean, there's a variety of different things. There's waffles, there's chews. People do make their own oatmeal balls. Trying to think of other things. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Some people eat pizza. It's like whatever their stomach can digest. It's what you train with is what you should be racing with. Okay.
That was actually one of my questions, which was, if you, have you ever been in the middle of a race and all of a sudden you get like a Jonesing for something else that you've never tried before? Like all of a sudden you want, something that's on that table that you were talking about. Do you go for it, or you just have to stay away?
Typically, like in the early mornings when you're pretty much hiking, it just kind of depends. I actually I've never had pancakes before. I did Rocky Raccoon in February in Texas, and I was just so hungry and I just needed carbs and I just needed more calories, that I went for the pancakes, and it turned out okay. But typically I don't suggest that, but there's going to be cravings. So you're taking a gamble.
Yeah. It's funny. So we had a question here from Nick, said, what helped you decide to run ultras? And then I think Nick also answered, there's a buffet.
Yeah, I do like to eat, so that's good.
But back to that, so you said you ran Boston Marathon in 2011, and then you started with ultras shortly after that. So what was that feeling? What was that desire that made you want to say, all right, I've done the marathon. I need more. I want more distance.
It's through a friend. I had a ultra running mentor. He was doing 100-mile races and kind of talked me into that. But the thing that actually got me into ultras was I did a race called Relay Iowa. It's where you run across the state of Iowa over a weekend. And that was, I think, in summer of 2011. And they were all ultra dudes that I was running with. I didn't know them. I met one of the guys at the Boston Marathon, and he invited me to join this group. So I ran across Iowa with him. And I ran about 56 and a half miles over that weekend. And that kind of got me where, wow, I can run longer. And then they kept on talking about the ultra distance to me. And I was kind of intrigued by it because I love to run. So I thought, let's try it. And I've run a lot of marathons. So I thought, if I can run 26.2 miles, I think I can do 31. So that kind of got me to that next level. And I've kind of just slowly progressed from there by doing timed events and 50-mile races. And then I got into 100.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it seems like there's a couple of us probably thinking some of the same things right about now. I know Nick is on the fence. He seems like he's on the precipice of making the leap here. I've been thinking about it for years. I don't know. I don't know if I just.
My bench needs to be built before.
She's forcing me to.
If you need something to get over the edge, do it for the belt buckle.
I like that.
Those are what I do it for. That's one of the reasons too.
That is a well-earned belt buckle, I must say. I think Jen was scheduled to do that race this year. Brian Burke had to go, and another guy that listens, Jeff Beeson, had to go at it last year, and they didn't make it, but they were signed up for this year. I think it got canceled, right?
Yeah.
And we actually had the three of them on a podcast once and discussed it, and it was I was really looking for. I think that they were all three on track to do it this year, and it's sad that they didn't get a chance. You're talking about doing all these miles and doing all these races. And I think the one thing you mentioned it when we were talking about training, the one thing that always kind of gets me is that you guys just run through the night in the woods, on trails, wherever it may lead. What is there? Do you have any tips sort of for, is it more difficult to stay focused at night, or do you have any different kind of tips for staying focused at night? And why don't you just kind of like, is it what I'm thinking? Is it as bad as what I think? Not necessarily bad, but is it, what's going through your head, I guess, at night?
Well, so tips wise, I'll start with that. Making sure you're staying ahead of the nutrition, because that's going to help with your mindset towards the night. Making sure you have the proper gear, because you're going to be freaking cold. So that's going to help with your mindset to keep you moving forward. Remembering your why, because that's pretty much going to get you to the finish line, is you have to want it. And also making sure you have a good pacer that likes to talk or keep you awake during the night, because they're going to be able to help you, but you still have to want it. Like, you still have to remember that why. So remembering your mantra, and know that you're going to have a low. You might hallucinate. You might, in your head, say you want to be done. But making sure that you just have to know that in your lowest of lows, you're coming to the next high. So just know that it's not going to last forever, and you just got to keep moving forward and focusing on the mile that you're on.
And in terms of like, you have a headlamp. Is it more dangerous? Is it something that you have to? It seems very dangerous. I
fell running in the dark one very early morning, and I kept running, but it sucked. So.
Yeah, making sure you have a good headlamp, and making sure that it's bright, and making sure that you have extra batteries with you, because your headlamp might die, or if it gets really cold, it could zap the batteries if it takes batteries. In the dark, I personally don't train a lot. A lot through the night in training. getting ahead of your caffeine. I mean, I take some caffeine during the night, and just knowing your why. Like if you're mentally strong, you can push through a lot, and you're going to be, when it's in darkness, you're not going to be running 7-minute miles at that point, most likely. You're going to be hiking. So you're not going to, I mean, you're going to have more time to be watching what's around you. Plus your pacer is kind of your guide, which is kind of cool during ultras. You have someone there for support. That is your head, your mind, your focus.
That's really
Because
cool.
you're not going to remember anything. And you're not going to, sometimes you're going to forget to eat and drink. And they're going to be like, hey, have you ate anything lately?
Now, typically when they give you pacers, so say for a 100-mile race, now I remember a friend, it might have even been Jen. Actually, I don't think it was Jen, but someone was doing a 100-mile race and they got 2 pacers for like the last 20 miles each or something like that. Is that typical? Or do you get it? Is it race to race? How often you get a pacer?
It kind of varies, and typically you can only have 1 pacer at a time at standard ultras, and typically you don't get a pacer till after mile 50. So any race distance that is under 50 miles, you typically don't get pacers.
Which interesting question from Nick, and I'm skipping over a few here, but is it possible to actually do a race without having a crew with you, just going at it by yourself, or is it not advisable? Or
It is possible to do without crew and pacers. I would not advise it, especially for your first one. And I will not do a race without having at least one person there for support. You just, no matter how strong and tough you are, it's just, it makes the experience more enjoyable and you get more memories out of it. And it's a lot easier just to have that support with you. Just because, like I said, you could be hallucinating. It's just for safety as well.
yeah. You know, the one thing, someone made a comment before about the ultra community being chill. I think that was the word that they used. And I've kind of experienced that, which having people on the podcast, like it's really, I mean, it seems to me like the community is very like, they're very open to new people coming in. They take care of each other very well. You know, to Nick's point about doing a race without a crew, I mean, if you're amongst other people, you're in good company for not having, you know, other people. You find that too? Is it a very helpful community?
Yes, it is. But during especially like a 100-mile race, the race gets spread out and you might not see people. You might see another runner that close to you. You just don't know. You can't assume you're going to see people around you.
Yeah.
I think
It's not like a marathon where there's people around you like crazy. You're kind of, it's you versus you kind of mindset.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I would think I got lost. I start panicking. Yeah, no, I wouldn't suggest doing it on your own.
But to Jen's point, a lot of crews, like my crew personally, at my last 100-mile that I did in February, they were crews. Hey, do you have this or that? We didn't have that, or they were asking us, and yes, very helpful. That's one thing about ultras. Everyone, the crews, everyone's super nice and willing to help anyone and everyone get to that finish line.
A question from earlier before, would you recommend doing your first ultra as a virtual race? And I know this is actually a good question for you because we were talking before we started tonight and you are sort of in the middle of a virtual challenge. So it's a good question for you to answer.
I think that it's awesome to do your first ultra as a virtual race, especially motivated, positive, and moving forward. Yeah, it's not a bad option.
You still get the same amount of bragging rights. Someone was asking about bragging rights before and how much that has to do with your motivation, I guess. How much does bragging rights go into it?
You just wear your buckle.
Yeah, see.
You don't even need to brag. You just wear the buckle.
So I have actually run through my questions, so we can kind of open it up to you guys if you have anything to go. I would love to have Nick kind of open his mic here for a second because he is on the verge of signing up for one. I can just tell he is thinking about it. I'm gonna turn on your mic, Nick.
It's all about the belt. He said it already.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about doing the 60K in Central Park. I mean, it's only it's a ride on the train from Montreal, so it could be fairly easy to go back and forth in a weekend or something like that.
I like the idea of that race. I mean, that race is it comes a week after the New York City Marathon, so you still kind of have a little bit of buzz in the town about running, and I think it's really cool. It's a really cool idea. And you were talking about Gateway too, and Jill, so with that in mind, that's a race that you're not going to probably be running too late at night, and if you are, you're in Central Park.
And you might not need a crew because actually you're in town and doing the same loop.
Is it loop?
Like 9 times. So.
Ooh, that's harsh.
So loops are great. I think loops, personally, for a first ultra, loops are awesome, but it's just a mind thing to mentally know you got to keep going back out there, because with loops, it's easy to, I'm not feeling good, I'm done.
Yeah.
So you have to really commit to it, that you're not going to forget.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I do, even in training for me, the loop for me is like it's dangerous, because if I run by my car, there's a good chance I'm going to get in it.
For me, that's the problem. I paid for it. I'm going to run it. If I paid for it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
It's good for less crew if you can't find crew, because that's one thing with ultras, is finding your crew of pacers and crew with you. It's not sometimes easy to getting people to commit to helping you. So that loop course can kind of limit the amount of people that you need for support.
Jen, I'm trying to unmute you.
Jen, we're going to unmute you. Hold on.
Hey. So, yeah, and Jill, good and well there's races going still. All the HPRS races are going. Mad Moose is going. I have a race. What?
There's minimal races.
Okay, yes, but there are races. A bunch of race companies still going on. Aravipa might be running Javelina still. There's a wait list, but Jamil is trying to figure that out. But the big ones are all canceled because Leadville, it was way too big. Nick, that race, I believe Megan Brown did it last year, and you don't need a crew for it. It's all road, and you should be fine. I don't know what the aid stations are like. They should be big buffets still, like regular ultras, but you should be fine without a crew for a 60K.
I just need one buffet at the end.
You just go get a freaking beer at the end. Treat yourself.
Burger.
You're in the middle of New York City.
Nick, if I'm 2 hours from Manhattan, Steph and I will drive down and be your crew. We wouldn't mind that at all. It would be our honor to do that. And Steph's mom lives there, so we can go in.
Right by the park on 83rd Street.
Maybe Steph will crew for both of us.
No, my bench. I need my bench.
She wants me to build her a bench.
Yeah, and Jill, I had a brat at Vermont. I had a brat actually without the bread because the bread wasn't going to sit well with me. I will say you look at foods like, no, that doesn't look appealing. Something that normally you're like, no, not right now. No. And you're like, you're looking at the smorgasbord of food. I'm like, what will stay down? What actually looks appealing right now? And half the time it's like, freaking strawberries look fantastic right now. and then the middle of the night, it's like, I'm like pounding Mountain Dew. The ramen is really good.
Right.
Except when
is another good one.
Well, I hadn't been able to. I told you I passed the dairy test, and now I can eat some of that again. I've been told by John LaCroix, the race director of HPRS, that he said pierogies are amazing. See, this is stuff that marathon runners and Ironman don't talk about. We talk about food constantly. We'll be talking about food with our pacers. It's just like, You know what sounds really good right now? One of those popsicles that's red, white, and blue.
The bomb pop.
It's really hot right now. Jill's laughing because she knows it's true.
Jill, we have one question in the chat also. You mentioned before running with nobody around you, all by yourself, sometimes in the middle of the night. How do you maintain a race pace? How do you keep focused on pacing when nobody's near you and there's no competition? And I'll throw another one out there. Are all ultras, are the courses well marked? How much do you have to know where you're going in the middle of the night or whatever? I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Depends on the course.
Yeah.
Yep. Courses, I mean, they're fairly good, well marked, but you can still make wrong turns like any race. I'm trying to think of what your other part of the question.
Oh, the pace. How do you keep yourself on pace or
your watch? I mean, that's huge. Because that's like just knowing that, but also knowing the cutoffs, because a lot of ultras have cutoffs. So just knowing those splits and having your pacer, that's why it's important to have a pacer with you, so that they know and they're keeping track of time, because you're really not, once you get past like mile 50, you're on 70, 80 miles, you think you're going fast and you might be hiking at a 20-minute mile pace. Like you think that if, I'm jogging a little bit and that's going to seem like, I'm doing 7-minute miles. Like your mind is just messed up at that point.
Yeah.
It's the other thing is with that is ultras. I mean, like when you're trying to do that, you can talk to your pacer, like she said, and just say, like you're thinking about the next aid station. You're like, I need to be in and out of here in 3 minutes. I'm going to need X, Y, and Z ahead of time. If you're able to think about that or get them a spreadsheet ahead of time, but if you're able to communicate with them, here's my vest, fill this up. I need to go take a piss over here and everything. And, like I'll do that. I'll munch on a few things here and then let's just get out of here. Push me out of here. Cause, and also never sit down at 100. That's why they joke, beware the chair. It's a kiss of death.
You just might not get up.
Yeah.
I do agree with Jen on having a game plan. So having kind of like a spreadsheet game plan prior to the race, so your crew knows and your pacers know like what you're expecting at each different aid station. So it's a lot of preparation goes into ultras, but that's just how you want to be successful with anything in life. If you prepare.
Well, and I've told you the story before, Jill, that I ended up with a hat instead of a coat in the back of and that was my husband's fault in the middle of the night. And I literally swore. So
Nick mentioned the Barkley marathons, which I think was funny because we talked about it a little bit before. I actually just watched it with my daughter Sam the other night. And Nick, the same. I don't know if the Barkley Marathon documentary scared me for that reason. It seemed like they didn't know where they were going. They just kind of run out in the woods, and it's like there's enough to deal with. Trying to run 125 miles up.
That's orienteering and bushwhacking and not ultra running.
Is that Jill? Do you ever found a race that has that kind of like orienteering, like Jen said?
That's a different kind of race. I would say, anything 100 miles or less, they're pretty well marked that you don't have to be finding your way through the woods like that. It's pretty well marked.
So Angela's from Canada. So she's right. Whenever we open the border and let you guys come back in, or is it you guys that aren't letting us up there? I don't remember.
We're not allowed anywhere right now. We're in America.
So I know she definitely likes to run on Saturdays. Is there? I don't know if that is anything that you kind of mark whether races start on Saturday or on Sunday. Mostly, usually they're both days because they're so long.
Yeah, typically the cutoffs are about 30 hours roughly, and typically they start on Saturdays. But every race is different. There's some 50Ks that are on Sundays and whatnot.
So she was wondering if you could recommend anyone in particular that would be a good first race, I guess, for her to come down and do a 50K.
Oh. Kind of depends on what state you want to go to.
Yeah, right?
There's so many. I mean, Ultra Sign Up is a great website to look on. Just to
Dangerous.
Kind of find, yeah, dangerous too. But to find different races. And they give you good descriptions too and kind of where they're at.
Angela was just showing off her medals in the back. I didn't know if you saw, but I don't. She needs an ultra one up there. I think that's why she's interested. It's interesting. It's interesting.
That framed one, that's the marathon medal. And I was sitting at my desk within less than probably 12 hours of having finished that, looking for a 50K ultra to do when I could barely move because I was in so much pain from having done
Also, a lot of ultras don't necessarily give out medals. They give out other trinkets. So you need to get beyond your medal rack or have a shelf for things.
Yeah, a trophy case.
That sucks. I love medals.
Or find a race that there are ultras that give out medals. Just make sure that you see what they're giving out when you're out. If that's a big thing, you know.
There's a lot that give out medals, but there's a lot that also just give out other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned earlier doing a timed race, Jill, and I think that's something that until I heard of that, I didn't even know they existed. Until I heard of that, I didn't even think about doing. But I know that Jen knew one that's in New England that's probably not even far from where you are, Angela. That because I remember you talked to me about it, Jen. Do you remember what that one was?
What, Ghost Train?
Is that was a time
that she's run? So Jill's actually, oddly enough, run that one too. They don't give out medals, but the only thing they'll give out, you can buy a belt buckle if you finish a 100-miler, and if you finish the 100-miler, they give out a railroad spike because it's on a rail trail. But the 50K, you're not going to get. They're so low budget and so cheap that they do not. And it's so community oriented that and a lot of people like to sign up for it, that you're not going to get a medal or anything like that. You can buy Ghost Train stuff, but they like literally are, like small beans.
Yeah.
For Trail Animals Running Club. Tark. So
Jill,
but they're a good company.
As a coach, sometimes people ask me, if I want to run a marathon, how many hours do I have to devote to training? Or if I want to do a half iron, how many hours a week do I have to enter? And I know, typically when someone asks me about like an Ironman, I always say you have to minimally give me 13 hours a week to 20. What would you say? How many hours per week do you run?
And for me personally, it varies per person. So I don't like giving out the hours. That's just how I coach my athletes. I would say minimum 30 hours, but it just varies.
Yeah, it's 30 hours is a lot.
Unless you're trying to get the GV rat done or 1,000 miles, and then you're crazy like me.
You guys have your own language, I think.
I know.
There's like a whole ultra language.
But coming from being a coach, if you're looking at wanting to do your first ultra, I suggest that you get a coach because one, that's going to keep you from not overtraining or undertraining. It's going to help you stay motivated and keep you less injured and just kind of keep you on track, set you up for success if it's someone that's actually done ultras in the past.
And I can vouch that I haven't gotten injured under Jill. Knock on wood. As she picks up her whiskey.
Definitely important. So Nick brings up a good point here, which is a good question. This is you'd be a good authority here, Jill. So I think it was like 2016. I did the Fort Lauderdale Marathon. The race started, and I got a quarter mile into the race, and a freight train went across the course. So people were literally leaped in front of the freight train to get across it. I did not, and they actually had a restart. So they made us walk all the way back to the start. and then started the marathon again. So that day I ran 26.4 miles. Would you consider that an ultra?
Aren't most marathons over 26.2 anyhow?
Exactly.
I think it has to be the 50K. I don't know. I guess I've never had anything below 31 miles considering an ultra.
Oh man.
My friend Nate is an Ironman and also 100-mile ultra runner. He's run 400 milers. He has a sticker on his car like it says 27 point something. I got lost. So
I like that.
Right.
I like that.
Let me see.
Were you like paying attention to all the questions?
I tried to get them all.
So let's
Did I
ask.
miss any
Did
of
we
them?
miss any questions? Like, did any of you ask and we just didn't see because we were
I
fooling
tried my
around?
best. I took notes.
I'll go with one. Because, you know, for when you're training, usually for a marathon, you go all the way up to 21, 22 miles at your longest. If you're training, let's say for a 50K, do you go by distance? Do you go like some sort of a percentage of the distance in your training?
I typically take athletes, if they're doing a 50K, I take them at least 27 miles. Probably the minimum that I take them at least. But I do a lot of time. It just depends on the person. I coach them doing time stuff too. I kind of mix up running for time or running for miles. It depends on if it's their first one or what their goals are.
Jill, how much I mean, maybe it's depending on the course or depending on the terrain. How much do you run versus walk on a typical ultra? And is it something that you practice?
I do suggest practice hiking because you are going to be walking, hiking, whatever your verbiage is in the ultra. As far as time versus running versus walking, I mean, as long as you're ahead of cutoffs, that's kind of the main goal. A lot of things that's different from a marathon to an ultra, I've noticed, is that people that run ultras are more focused on finishing and they're not focused on, oh, I got to qualify for Boston, or, oh, I have to run a sub 3-hour marathon. They're focused on pushing their limits, testing their body, mentally getting stronger, staying injury free, having fun, finding their love for running again and their passion versus, oh my gosh, I have to hit a certain time goal.
So it's never like, but there's never any kind of like, oh, I have to, like, sometimes we get, I mean, I see it all the time. People are like, oh, for my marathon, I have to run from beginning to the end.
A good rule of thumb that I've learned, and I don't know if you agree with this, Jill, is try to run the flats and the downhills, and give yourself permission to speed hike up the uphills. And if you need, I sometimes, even when I get up the hill, have to walk a little bit to flush out my legs because it's like, oh my God, that hurt going up the hill. But it depends what it is. If you're going up a mountain during an ultra, then that can hurt after a while. So you're like, okay. And then I just have to force myself, all right, you need to run, So it is a very mental thing, at least in my experience, just saying, okay, you can run, you can go right now, try to run as much of this as you can. If you need to walk, it's okay, but take up a run again immediately as soon as you can.
And I do agree that in ultras, typically the standard runners, they're hiking up the uphills because that's wasted energy if you're running, if you're going to try to run up all them. I mean, it depends on what level you are as an ultra runner or what your goals are, but I agree with Jen on that.
For most of us are not Courtney DeWalter.
So both James and Denise Morris they're truck drivers. They're never in the same state from day to day, which is interesting because I coach Denise, so we're facing this question almost on a daily basis. They deal with so many varied terrains. and altitudes. Like, one day they're up in one state, they're way up high, and one day they're, sea level. You probably deal with that a lot with ultra running at different altitudes, running at different altitudes. How do you go about approaching them differently?
Listening to your body. So that's a huge thing that ultra runners need to be good at, is listening to his body and pushing when they can push, and having those easy days when they need to take an easy day if it's mentally draining. But the main thing is staying on top of your nutrition and staying hydrated.
Yeah, and I think altitude is one of those things where it's almost like it's just an added factor, like heat would be or something like that. So it's another thing. Like if you're running at sea level versus running, I mean, I think you have to kind of give yourself a break if you look at your splits and you're like, wow, I'm like a minute slower today. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to take all the variables into consideration: weather, heat, okay, your sleep, your nutrition for that day. If all those things have been lacking, or it's really hot out, then you need to kind of dial it back. Like I said, listening to your body and kind of not overdoing it.
And so Angela's comment that she would do a 50K road race, but doesn't feel safe on trails necessarily. Is there a fair amount of road racing in the ultras? Is it mostly trails? And do you have clients or anyone that feel the same way about being? I'm interested, Angela. Is it more about just in general,
Safety, or is it just
wild
guys on trails?
If I read about a woman being attacked when she's out on a run, it's on a trail. And there's two main ones around here. That one actually in where I live, First Lake, there's been a couple times women have been attacked there. And then there's one in Dartmouth, farther in, a little bit in, that's actually part of a race I do, which it's race day, so I feel fine on race day. It's part of the 10K race. But no, I can't do them.
Carry pepper spray or go with a front.
Wow. That was a weird echo. That was a weird echo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jill. What were you going to say?
So my suggestions would be, I call it race mace, but it's pepper spray. So having pepper spray with you, 1. 2, you can bring a friend, but I run a lot by myself. So also only having one earbud in if you're listening to music, or don't run with music when you're on trails, and also being aware of your surroundings. So just being very aware of what's around you are the tips. But
yeah, I carry pepper spray. I sometimes go with a friend. I also almost never have music in because of rattlesnakes anyhow around here. So
and also when people are people are coming at you or from behind, like I'm always kind of looking back. But if someone passes me, when they pass me, I always turn around to make sure they're not going to come at me from behind, no matter what gender they are, just to be aware of that surroundings and keeping that safety up.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I think I
wouldn't think about doing that.
I definitely take, as most men probably take it for granted, but I mean, it's one of those things that, I don't think much of, but yeah, I know.
I also, it's probably been about 2 months ago, I had a near attack when I was on a trail. A guy was hiding in the bushes, wearing all black, turned around and started coming at me. One thing that is very helpful too is making eye contact with the person if you are in a situation like that, just because it makes them know, hey, I see you, hey, don't even think about coming near me, kind of thing. So always making eye contact is helpful.
how did you get out of that one? I don't recall that one.
Yes, that is put it out there. I actually ended up calling the cops on that. I literally started screaming and took off sprinting, and he didn't fall. I couldn't see him from behind me, and then someone helped me as I got farther down the trail.
Since we frequent the same trails, do you mind telling me where that was, just so I could be more vigilant?
This one was This one was heading on just like Coal Creek, Rock Creek area.
Okay. Okay.
Sherry.
Sherry,
It's
can
good to know.
I feel like you have some good advice to give to people here. We actually run, Sherry and I and Stephanie run a lot of the same places, although we've never met in person.
Yeah, we should meet in person. Social distancing, of course.
I can't unmute you here, Sherry, but I'm trying.
There we go.
Right. So for me, I shouldn't say unfortunately, my situation, I have to go out very early in the morning. So sometimes the sun isn't up just yet. So just as my experience as being a police officer, I'm always very aware of my surroundings. When I'm running, if I'm running by a place that has any openings, I always run further over to the left of that area so that if anyone is there, obviously, they come out, I can do my attack. I'm always thinking in my head, what will I do? If I'm coming up on someone that's coming towards me, if I can, I try to cross safely, but if I can't, I'm always thinking like, what am I gonna do if they try something? I always make eye contact, do a head nod, say hello to let them know that I've seen them. So if they are, I've taught women self-defense, and I always tell them a person who is out to target you is less likely to maybe attack you if they figure that you'd be able to give a description and say, you know, he had on a Boston Red Sox hat and a blue shirt. But if you have your head down and you're being that person that they're looking for to prey on, you're most likely going to attempt that. So when she said that, I was just like, yes, 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 because that's what I do when I go out. I try to make sure that I'm keeping my eye out, don't put myself in a position where I can become a target. And I kind of like say you walk, or I should say run with a purpose, head up, confident, don't look like a victim. And that way you don't put yourself in that situation.
Wow. Great. I learned a lot today.
Good information.
Yeah.
Also good advice when you're on, you know, mile 12 or 13 and you're not gonna have your head down.
Yeah. Well, you gotta remember someone coming toward you. You gotta, you know.
Also,
What do you do?
Huh?
So, what do you do in the situation? Like I posted it on Ordinary the other day. This was road running around the corner from my house, and I did not get that license plate because I was so freaked out of my mind when he revved up the gas and went through the stop sign, you know, like, and all I could think about is bolt as quick as I could to the other side of the road. And my heart was pounding out of my chest. And everybody's like, report him to the police, report, you know, like on the trail in Ultra. I'm like, well, I can't. And I had hoped that the people at our neighbors that were walking on the sidewalk on the other side, and these are residential roads, not, you know, busy roads, where it's 25 miles per hour max driving through there and kids play in the neighborhood.
So
you know.
I would recommend just that even if you can't get a plate, if you could at least, when you get somewhere safe, share some information. Because I'll share a situation that happened to me a few weeks ago. So I go out early in the morning, and this particular day I was running back towards my house. I do different routes, so that way if anyone's watching me, they don't know where I'm going every day. And this particular day, an individual drove past me. He pulls over to the side of the road, waits for me to pass him, rolls his window down. And I wear aftershocks, so I can still hear what's going on around me. And he was just like, hey, you want to ride? I'm just like, yeah, you're a creep. And I keep going. Thought nothing of it. Then about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, I did a totally different loop. And I'm coming back towards my house from a different area. And there he is again, already pulled over with the, hey, you want to ride? So what I did when he did that, I pulled my phone out because I had my phone in my bra because I didn't have pants on my leggings. I snapped the plate and I called the police and let them know, hey, this guy is out early in the morning doing this. And I figured if he's out there that often, he's probably doing it to other women. So I called them, they came to my house, I filed a report, I gave them the plate number, and that was it. But it's like, even if you can give a car description or something, or at least just document it. So that way, if you encounter it again, then they already have that previous report on file. But
The
even with
only
the car
information-
description, huh?
The only information that I can remember, because the last thing I saw as he busted through the stoplight, and I knew it was a pickup truck, was a 20-something-year-old kid with a bald head and laughing hysterically as he, busted the stop sign and put on the gas to try to hit
But
me.
that's something, because if he does it again somewhere and say someone actually gets his plate number and they run the plate and bring it back to that person, he fits the description that you gave them, that connects him to the same incident that happened previously. And they're more apt to be able to say, hey, you were the person that did X, Y, Z. So it's like, you still say something, even if you can't get a plate number, any information you can give is helpful.
I don't remember what color the truck was or anything like that. I just was freaked out of my mind. So
The unfortunate thing is that I've learned over my years of experience, you think there's things that happen that people will step up and say something and report. And unfortunately, everyone has the same mindset that someone else is going to say something and nothing ever happens.
the only thing I did have is because I did have neighbors that were walking a dog and pushing a stroller and saw this and were just as shocked. I said, did you get a plate number? They said, no. They said, if he drives back around, we'll report him to the police, is what they said.
Yeah.
But it's good. Whatever you can get is definitely helpful.
Yeah, it's a good lesson actually for, if anything, now that we're all here, and if anything happens like anybody else, you kind of know what to be aware for, what to look for.
I actually feel more safe on the trails. Not as much so after you said that, but I generally feel more safe on the trails than I do on the roads.
It's interesting how it's almost like a personal preference to a certain degree of how safe you feel. Anyone else have anything else for Jill? I know it's kind of been about an hour, so but if anyone else has anything else, shoot it out.
I will say something. If you look up in your area and there's a RAD class being offered, I think that's something that would be helpful for the females. They also have male-oriented classes. Those are just harder to find, but it just gives you that one up in the event that you're in a position where you are confronted by someone, and it gives you that, I guess you could say, heads up. So check that out in your local area. Your local police department. RAD is rape, aggression, defense. And they do offer it for males as well.
Right. I'm gonna look one up.
Yeah,
It's just more like a self-defense class.
You do hear horror stories every now and again. There was one in New York, a girl.
Yeah.
The girl was killed, and then I don't know if you have that. There's one girl on Twitter who she has a logo that is the like Garmin of how she was running around a warehouse to try to escape the attacker, and she got it all on her Garmin map. So it was crazy, but I don't know. It's out there,
Yeah.
Yep.
Coach, what jigger is that? What number jigger?
They have their own language.
No, whiskey.
Yeah, well,
You feeling relaxed?
Yep, I'm feeling good.
It's cocktail hour.
Back to ultra trail running. I'm curious. There was, well, when I was younger, my dad used to say, if you go in the woods, carry some kind of a bell or something that makes some noise so that the animal hears you.
Ooh, see?
It was mainly for the bears, because if you get stuck between a mama bear and a little cub, you're in big trouble usually. So I was wondering, when you're running at night or in some trails, are you carrying some sort of a small noise maker?
So my pack, actually attached on my pack, there's a whistle. So I have a whistle with me at all times when I'm wearing my pack.
That's great.
Speaking of gear, I think that might be a good question. I go out to train, and even if I got a long run, I have a couple of gels and a water bottle that I refill whenever I can but you guys have the vest, the water. What do you take on a if you're going for a long training run? You mentioned your vest. What exactly is in the vest?
My vest has 2 bottles in the front, and then I have a variety of pouches around on the vest that I carry all my nutrition calories with me. I also have sunscreen. I have Aquaphor, any anti-chafing. I have Tylenol. I have anything to help with Tums or anti-diarrhea. I have Band-Aids. I have toilet paper and Ziploc bags.
Reusable cup, the collapsible.
Yep. I have my ID, and any credit card or cash.
Charger.
Yeah.
For the phone.
But if I'm going on my training run, I mean, I just have everything in my pack.
Right.
I just keep it in there. So it's always with me, because I feel you train how you race. So if you're going to have all that stuff when you're racing, you should probably train with it on, because you just got to get used to it. And when I wear my pack, it's just like attached. It's like I'm wearing a shirt. It's always with me, and it's always on. Like, it's just natural. So wearing a pack doesn't seem bulky or weird to me, because I always train with it.
Yeah,
Ditto.
It's almost the reverse for marathoners, because when you go to a race, there's always the water stations, typically almost that, depending on the size of the race, every mile. So it's like when you train, you're carrying more stuff than you are if you're going to be on race day. If they need anything, if they need some gels. It's almost a reverse for training for a marathon.
Ultra, yeah.
Yeah. So a question from Denise there. I shouldn't even say it. Well, she wants to, I guess, thinking about running an ultra in 10 years or so. Is 55 years old too old to start to train for an ultra?
No. I feel like ultras start getting your prime around 40 and 50.
That's kind of interesting, though. I mean, it is, right? I mean, you get some of these endurance events, and some of the guys really competing in the top level are 40 years old. And I mean, is that what it is in ultras, 40 to 50? Like a lot of the
I have people all the way up to their 70s that do ultras, like good friends, run 100-milers. So
that's I know Sherry just started too. Sherry, what have you done before? You've done a half?
I randomly got up one day and decided that I thought I could do it. Well, first I got up one morning and was like, oh, I think I want to see if I could do 10 miles. That's when I almost lost my teeth. Because I didn't have a course planned. I did not have a course planned. And then I was just like, if I run here and go to this park where our group usually runs, I was like, I think I can get to the park and run a couple of laps and make it happen. I stepped up on a curb that was unfamiliar. It gave way. I fell, and my tooth went through my lip. And I kept going, though. I went to the park, did my 10 miles. And then the following week, it was like, oh, I did the 10 miles. I think I could do a half. So I got up and went and randomly did a half. I probably should have trained for it. And I want to properly train and try it again. But yeah, that's the furthest I've gone so far as a half.
Yeah, Sherry's also in the middle of a run streak. I think she's in 62 days?
Today was day 61. Yes.
Very good. Congratulations. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Good to see. Good to see. Anything else for Jill before we let her go? All right. You got some, James? Let me get James.
He's saying
No, you're saying goodbye. All right. Hey, Jill, what's next for you? And if we want to get someone wants to follow up with anything, how can we reach you?
So currently I'm in the Leadville 100,000 feet of climbing challenge, and that doesn't end until August 22nd. So that's what my race is that I'm focused on right now. I'm about 76,000 in, so getting closer. So I should be able to get it done, hopefully, soon. And reaching me, you can follow me on Instagram or send me a direct message on there at jbeckrun. You can send me an email at jbecker004@hotmail.com or shoot me a Facebook message.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I learned a lot tonight. I'm kind of happy that Tamara didn't show up. I think she was going to try to talk me into doing one of these things. But Nick did a good job anyway. I'm thinking about it, Nick. I could see New York City being a good idea. So maybe.
I'll need to be able to cross the border.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. So thanks so much, Jill. Really appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. And thank you, Jen. We haven't seen you one of these yet. So thanks for coming.
Sherry either, I think. Sherry's a newbie.
Yeah, Sherry too. That's right.
Yeah, first time.
Awesome. So I don't have any specific guests for, every 2 weeks. They've been really informative. We've had some really good guests tonight included. We will put this up on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow or sometime over the weekend, and you can check it out. And I think that's it. So thank you guys all so much for coming by and spending time with us. And thank you, Jill. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Good night.
Happy running.
Have a good day, guys.
Good night,